In this video, we are going to take a look at using JUnit nested test. Now, up on the screen, I have the owner map service. And what this service is doing is it's mimicking a persistent store. But in this case, it's just using a hash map underneath the covers. So if I look at the abstract map service, I can come in here and see that it's just simply using a hash map underneath the covers, and very simple implementation where we can persist objects, treat it like, I'm using air quotes, a database, some type of persistent store. Now, in testing this, if we wanted to write tests for this, we could run a number of interesting scenarios. And this is a nice use case for nested tests. Now, I'm going to deviate a little bit from what I've been doing in the course here. I've actually written out the test ahead of time. So this is a lot of typing. I've got some things collapsed here. So there's what I got, about 105 lines of code in this test class. And I just want to step through some things here in a code review style to show you the nested test. This just be way too much typing for you guys to watch. And that's why I'm doing it this way. But a lot of interesting stuff is happening in this. First thing that I'd like to call your attention to is on line 15, I'm using display name at the class level. So that sets up a name, and that what's going to happen underneath the covers is JUnit is going to go through and concatenate the strings there. So when I get down to here on owners are 0, that's going to be concatenated together. So we'll see that run in a little bit here. Now, I want to talk about nested tests. So I have first nested test. So the way you declare a nested test, you can see here on line 38, defining another class, a subclass, or a nested class within the test class. And I can have a before option on it, and I can run tests within it. So basically, you're going to be nesting classes for all the nested tests. And to declare it as a nested test, you have to use the nested annotation, as you can see that I've done there on line 38. Now, once you get into that test class, you have all the features and functionality of JUnit and the entire JUnit lifecycle. So when this test pet count runs, what's going to happen is this before each is going to run, and this before each is going to run. So let me break this out. I'm going to do a little print line statement here. And now I'm going to say over here, I'm going to also do a system out. And I'm just putting in some print line statements there so we can actually see this. And I'm going to go in here and run the test pet count. So let's take a look at that on the console. And we can see that I get the first before each and then the nested before each. So we can see that output occurring there. Now let's go down a little bit further. And you can see I have another nested test. And let's even come down here, go a little bit deeper. And I'm going to go ahead and run the save owner. Let's run him. And see, this is in a third level of a nested test. And you can see how IntelliJ is displaying it. So we have the owner map service, pet type, and then saved owners underneath pet type. So you can do a variety of different things here of nesting, and these tests would run. And I want to explain another thing that's happening here. So I have a test saved owner, and then I also have find owners test. And this is going to be dependent on a couple things here. So under saved owners test, a nested test class within that is a find owners test. And I'm doing two things here, and I want to show you explicitly what's happening here. So I have find owner and find owner not found. So I have two test conditions. And here, the saved owner test, this is going to execute, and I'm saving a 2L by ID. But because of the way things are running here on line 98, that's not going to get found. Because what's going to happen is when this test runs, we're going to hit the before each, save that, and we're going to have a new instance going. So the saved owner, even though I'm persisting data to the map in that test, what happens is it gets reset through the cycle of the test, through the test lifecycle. I get a brand new implementation of it, so that 2L actually gets lost. I can prove that to you by running it, and we'll see that I'm getting the 1L. Test 1 is being found because it's in the before each. But 2, even though the test that runs in the nest above it is not there, it's not going to be found because it's getting reset by the before each method. So important thing to understand. And then finally down here, I have another one. Test owners are still 0. And actually, let's run everything all together right now. So we can see, get a lot of chatter here of what's happening with the nested, but everything's running correctly. And let me collapse this. So we can see I have my first test, make sure that the owners are 0, and then owners are still 0, even though I'm going into the nest and I'm saving things and creating things. That's all happening within the test lifecycle. So something for you guys to take a look at. This is a pretty powerful tool, and I explicitly selected the owner map service because in this, let's take a look at the implementation. So I'm mimicking out a persistent source. I'm going to have find operations, I'm going to have save operations, delete operations. So a nice use case for nested tests where I can set these up and nest, and let's expand this guy out. So here we can see I can get into multiple nests and then run tests for different segments of my persistent store and set that up. So pretty cool functionality. Honestly, it's going to take a little bit for you guys to get your head around it. It is pretty new. I mean, this is all brand new to JUnit 5. I suggest check out the code and take a closer look at it. I did deviate from what I normally do here and not typing everything out. A pretty complex example here. It took me probably about 45 minutes to write everything out and test with it. So I will check this in. I'll get rid of the print line statements, but I'll go ahead and check this in, and you guys can check it out at GitHub and examine it. Really, really cool feature of JUnit 5. I really like this, and something that I'll be incorporating in my test of the development that I do. So definitely a nice tool in JUnit 5.